Welcome to Standing in Faith. I'm in the studio with Jeff.
Here I am.
And Mike.
Hello.
And I'm David. And today we want to talk about graced.
Yes. And the reason is because just a few episodes back, we had a Thanksgiving titled episode on Thanksgiving prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up the synonyms for Thanksgiving, and graced was a synonym. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, we want to talk about giving thanks, Thanksgiving. The day, that is today, actually. You guys are celebrating wherever you are, if you're even listening, or maybe you'll listen on Friday or whatever, but you're celebrating in some way Thanksgiving. Or maybe you're not. I don't know, but
What's it called when you revolt from Thanksgiving? It's not a bah humbug.
No.
That was Scrooge for Christmas. Mm-hmm. What's it called?
Lunch.
Lunch.
Lunch. Yeah.
I guess it doesn't have a name. No. But you know what? I mean, you bring up a very good point. I mean, we're kind of entering the time of year where there's a lot of people that are suffering in sorrow and grief, and I was one of them just a few years ago. So I would say that I was not particularly looking forward to Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Or Christmas for that matter, or Advent, or any of the celebration times at the end of the year.
Well, you know, the interesting thing when you think about the history of Thanksgiving, remember the early settlers would celebrate it with the Indians, Thanksgiving. They'd all come together and celebrate this day of giving thanks. And, you know, I think that sometimes we go through the motions of what we call Thanksgiving. And it is a great time when families, you know, converge on each other, and hopefully that there's peace throughout that Thanksgiving time. But they all come together and laugh and eat and laugh. And I can remember many Thanksgivings we'd have the huge meal. And, you know, and turkey, of course, has tryptophan in it, and it makes you sleepy. So, you know, you go in there and you kind of get heavy-eyed after you eat. A lot of times, typically, the guys would be in watching the ball games, and the women would be doing something else, although there were some women who were avid or were very much into the football stuff. And they would sit in there and scream and holler and carry on. But it is interesting, too, because then when supper came, you know, it was leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up having
Version 2.
version 2.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a youngin', and I don't know how old I was, little. We'd always go to my aunt's 300-year-old farmhouse. And it always had... Well, it had hardwood floors, but 300 years ago, hardwood floors didn't like completely butt up against each one of the planks.
Mm-hmm.
They were wide. It was just like somebody cut trees, so they were
I remember
uneven.
that. Yeah.
And it was drafty and cold. But I remember my grandmother used to knit socks, like slipper socks, for my brother and I. Every year for Christmas, that's what we would get, because we would literally wear through them. Why? Because they were like ice skating indoors. So we'd get running in her house and slide on the floors. Years later, my mother was terrified that we were going to tear a toe off, right? Getting one of our little toes stuck in one of the cracks. And this was a 300-year-old farmhouse. Pardon me. So it was heated by fireplaces. Every room had a fireplace.
Right.
So there was fires going all over the place, all over the house. And the dining room did not have electricity.
Huh.
and the dining room, it was lit by candles. So there was like a chandelier, but it held candles.
Candelabra.
Like a real proper, and there was candles all over the place. Well, I was a lot when I was little, so was my brother. I am positive my parents had no desire for Thanksgiving because it was just terror, whether I was going to rip a toe off or I was going to burn the house down. Because we didn't sit still. We were all running and climbing, and I mean, bundle of energy and excitement and joy. So I'm sure that it was probably a terrifying thing to bring us to her house for Thanksgiving. But we never burned anything down. And we'd eat. And then, this is funny. So my grandparents would come. And my grandmother, she's Italian, and she would just maul us. Like, hands on the face, all over, kissing. It was just, she would maul us every time she saw us. But my grandfather, he had hearing aids. He would literally sit down on the couch, turn his hearing aids off, and just sit there and smile for hours. Like blissing out and just watching all the chaos without any of the noise.
Right.
And then after dinner, we'd go and watch the football game. And then after the football game, we would. My cousins always wanted to watch Mighty Joe Young. And it was black and white. We watched it black and white. Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mighty Joe Young. I don't remember that, but whatever.
I think it's about a gorilla.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like, yeah. I think. I'll have to Google it while you're talking.
Well, I think that it's interesting because we have a day, and it's kind of interesting. It's one of the most traveled days of the year. People are traveling everywhere to go see somebody or do something, and so in the midst of frustration of traveling and screaming at people and doing all that, then there's some of the stuff that Jeff just described.
It is. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah.
Mighty Joe Young. It was filmed in 1949.
Wow.
Yep. It's black and white, and it's from the same directors that I think were responsible for King Kong. Yeah.
Was it a cartoon?
No.
Huh?
No.
Oh, well.
They did a remake in 1998.
I probably by that age was not interested in whenever you were a kid. But I think that one of the things that comes to my mind is how I've been reading through the Genesis, Exodus. I've been into Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and especially in Deuteronomy where Moses is giving them all the directions now for going into the Promised Land, and he keeps talking about how, all right, yeah, you're going to go in here, and you're going to have everything. I mean, it's going to be nice. You've been in the wilderness all these years, and now you're going to be in the land of milk and honey where there'll be everything. And he describes all of this. And he says, and he keeps calling them a rebellious and stubborn people, because all through the wilderness, all they did was grumble, complain, and whine and moan about everything, And then they're going into this land, and he says, and, you're going to end up forgetting. You're going to forget God. And I sometimes think that in our world of affluence, that while we come together for a Thanksgiving, one day of the year, I sometimes think that we miss the idea of a Thanksgiving every day and what we're grateful for. Mm-hmm. That being grateful for something, you can say thank you and not even be grateful for it. You know,
Yeah.
you can say, "Oh, thank you." But graciousness, I think, goes deeper. I think there's something inside you that is truly, truly thankful for that. You know, are we truly, truly thankful for this huge spread that we're and the family that's around you? Or are we truly thankful for whatever it is that's there? Now, I know there's heartbreak at Thanksgiving because there's people that maybe they're alienated from their families. And you know, and that's a sad thing. But there still doesn't mean there's not something that we can be gracious to God for in our lives. And I almost think that you know, all right, we got this Thanksgiving, we're thankful, and then tomorrow is Black Friday, and we're going to go get mad and scream at people and grab stuff, and you know, I don't do that thing, but some people love Black Friday. But I just wonder do we all year long complain and whine about you know, my boss is this and I don't have this and I wish that, and you know, these people have everything and why can't, you know, do we moan and groan? Because the greatest wealth that we can have is not things, it's being content with what we do have. Mm-hmm. You know? Because even Jesus said, he said, if you seek first the kingdom of God, then all these, quote, things will be added to you. You know, but often we get stuck on the things and forget about the king or the kingdom. And I think the focus of our life needs to be who governs our world. Are we going to walk in obedience to the King? Are we going to obey him? He lives in us, those of you that have opened your heart up and received him in. He is your King and your Lord, but is he always in every aspect of your life? I think that's where we rejoice. Paul said in Ephesians 4, he says, rejoice in the Lord once in a while. No, he said, rejoice in the Lord always. So do we rejoice even when things are not necessarily perfect? Do we rejoice in him even if this Thanksgiving is kind of a bummer for you and that maybe you're not, you know, maybe your family's rejected you or you've rejected them or something, and there's not a sense of what that looks like, because that's every day anyway. That's not just on Thanksgiving Day. It's just a big reminder, I think, of maybe that kind of stuff. But do we ever just stop in the midst of that and realize just how much God has blessed us? And you just start with redemption. Go back and remember when he walked into your life and things changed, right? Can we just learn to be content right there? There are times I go back and thank him. I look at that and I think, man, I thank God you snatched me out of the fire, you know? Because who knows what would have happened if he hadn't? Well, I can
tell you, we'd make a mess of it.
Well, I wouldn't be around, sure.
We'd make an absolute mess of it.
Yeah.
Which is what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've been pondering a lot of times. I'm aware that God lives in me, that he'll never leave me or forsake me. And then there's certain times where I'll lean into that more. But what he's been getting me to change my perspective on is that's an always. It's an always. He's always there. He always wants to be a part of whatever it is that I'm doing. And there's a lot of times where I think I rely on myself. And I've been trying to become increasingly aware that he's always there, even in the mundane. So this morning I was steam cleaning my kitchen range, and man, those steam cleaners are wonderful. They really are. They just blast through just about anything. But I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden I became aware that, yeah, Jesus is doing this with me,
Yeah.
right? He's doing this with me. And I'm wondering if he was marveling over the steam cleaner as much as I was, to be honest with you. I'm like, wow, what a great gadget. But yeah, I think we, at least I do. I have a tendency to lean on him in the bigger things, in the things that seem beyond me. But I guess, admittedly, I don't know that I do that in the small things, the things that I feel like I'm capable of. So I've been trying to become more aware of constantly being yoked with him. And even when it's not a heavy burden, he still can, we're still yoked. It doesn't change. It's always present. So trying to get my thinking to be that he's with me in all things, even the simple, even the mundane. Like, I'm going to have to clean some leaves out of my yard soon, and he'll be with me for that. So, and it's not just the giant things, I guess, is where I'm at. And I'm trying to practice more awareness so that my awareness is constant rather than only when I think I need it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are no circumstances in our life that are coincidental in God's realm. And I think sometimes we need to look at those and realize that God is always at work in and around us constantly. And I like what you said about the small things. You know, it's just like washing dishes.
Yep.
I got to wash these dishes and put them up now. You know, I wonder if we say, okay, Jesus, you and me are washing these dishes. Thank God I've got dishes to wash.
Yeah.
Thank God that there was something on them that we consumed. Thank you for that. I'm reminded of Brother Lawrence, who was in a monastery. He was a cook in a monastery. And he had a physical handicap, which made things somewhat difficult for him. But he learned to practice God's presence in everything that he did, and he would be overwhelmed. He would be overwhelmed with the presence of God when he was cooking. He said that he had more blessed moments with God when he was doing things like that than when they had the times of prayer, you know, the instituted times of prayer and all those kind of things. He had more blessed moments with that, and I, you know, it is a discipline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't always think about doing things like cooking or cleaning and that kind of thing. Doing them with Jesus. The funny thing is, as y'all were talking and talking about doing things with Jesus, like, man, that sounds like a whole lot of fun. You know, even steam cleaning or dishes or cooking, it just kind of sounds like fun to be there with Jesus. You know, it seems like kind of joke around or laugh about things, but
It's fascinating. So every night before we go to bed, Megan and I ask Jesus about our day and what he wants us to know about our day, and if there's anything we need to be aware of for tomorrow, that type of, just sit and have a conversation with Jesus before I'm snoring. And last night I was like, okay, what happened yesterday morning? And something popped up, and Jesus is like so proud of himself. He's like, I did that. Mm-hmm. I kind of laughed. I'm like, well, okay, thank you. And then I was like, what about afternoon, what was going on in the afternoon? Oh, that. And Jesus was like, I did that. And then the evening, and same thing. He's like, I did that. And I was just like, these were things that I'll be honest with the listeners, I would have missed. These weren't like earth-shattering spiritual moments. They were just, that popped into my head. And Jesus is like, I did that. And it was just, he was playful about it, but it was also serious. He did that. He orchestrated that. His hands were on that. He was doing it. Which kind of goes along with what I said earlier, and that is getting my awareness opened in the small and the mundane and the times, the stuff, paying bills. Jesus does that with me. I'm like, I don't like paying bills. I wonder what Jesus thinks about it. But you can ask him, and what I'm realizing is just how gracious that is of him. Really, it's changing my perspective on it. I used to think Jesus was okay. I've always thought Jesus was the King of Kings, but kings are busy, right? And if you're the King of Kings, you got lots of kingdoms to worry about and that fall under your kingdom, right? I mean, just hierarchically, organizationally, in the world we live, that's a busy guy. That's an important guy. Well, it kind of blows my head when I think about him, blows my mind, but he's always with me, and he's always with Mike, and he's always with David, and he's always with the listeners. I mean, he's always present. That's it. One of the names of God, right? Jehovah Shammah, right? He's present, and that baffles me a little bit, but it's also what a wonderful thing, because when I am going through a hard time, I know he's there. When I'm going through a good time, I know he's there. And when I'm going through a neutral time, he's still there. And what a blessing that is to us, to have that available to us. The question in my mind comes, have I been taking advantage of that availability? Have I really been? And I think the more that I do, the more of an adventure, even mundane things can be, are.
Well, and I think that goes back to what you said, David, about it being a discipline, right? We have to practice and train's not quite the right word, but sort of to be present with the Lord in everything that we're doing, because just having that wonderful awareness of him when I'm walking the dog or when I'm taking the trash out or whatever it is, if I practice that more and more, then when something a little bit harder comes up, I've got that routine. I've got that practice in there. Jesus, it's you and me. So a little bit of harder thing comes, it's easier to step into that and have that awareness. And then when the harder thing comes, it just kind of keeps it always in the awareness. And by no means am I perfect at it, but it certainly makes things a lot easier. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, a lot more enjoyable as well. If I'm doing it with Jesus, it's not just something I've got to get done. It's all right, Lord, let's do this together. Let's have some fun together. I can be thankful for all of these things. I even think about Thanksgiving coming up, and I cook. I don't necessarily like to cook. And then all of a sudden, all of these things are being cooked, and the kitchen is just like all of this stuff and everything's going on. But it gets me focused on what's going to be at the end of all of this. Even if all the cooking is a lot of work and it's not easy to do, and trying to time the turkey coming out and the potatoes going in and everything's got to be warm, Jesus is with me during all of that. But then at the end of it, there's a big thing to be thankful too, as we sit down and we have the meal. And even though over the years it's looked very different, whether we're traveling somewhere or families coming up to visit us, there's always the presence of the Lord there, and just the enjoyment of Him. The food becomes secondary. The football game becomes secondary. Now, I grew up watching the Lions at my uncle's house, and that was always a guaranteed loss. So just have to be thankful that we have a TV we can watch a game on. But being aware of Him in the quote-unquote small things, and I don't think that any of them are small to Him, but being aware of Him in the smaller things gives us more awareness in the bigger things.
So if you are, the listeners, going through challenging Thanksgiving for whatever reason that would make it challenging, I guess my encouragement is you're not alone.
No.
You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's an opportunity to pause and change your mindset, right? And I think of it that, you know, here we're fortunate. There's a few places in Scripture where it says we have the mind of Christ. I think Romans 12:2 and 1 Corinthians 2:16 talk about that. But I guess the point is, not all of our thoughts are ours. Some of them can be Jesus's thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, it's simply like, Jesus, what are you thinking about? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I can even go so far as to say, Mike and I were talking about this yesterday, and for me, it was a big moment of realization where, you know, if all my thoughts aren't mine, some of them can be Jesus's thoughts, well, then that would sort of make it sense that all of my feelings might not be mine. Some of them could be Jesus's. And all of a sudden I came to this realization that, right, if we're grieving a loss of relationship, a loss of family member, a loss of an expectation that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? Jesus is feeling that same thing that we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fascinating idea to just ponder for a little bit.
Yeah.
It kind of would imply that not all my tears are mine.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them actually might be Jesus's tears, especially for somebody that's grieving a loss. So, yeah, and I don't think that that's the mystery is to me that Jesus not only is present with us all the time, but He's also thinking and feeling with us at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So He can feel our emotions. And I would think that would be, for me, it would be difficult. Then for me to watch a loved one suffer is sometimes harder for me than if I suffered myself. So I'm kind of blown away by that's how near He is to us.
Mm-hmm.
And how caring and compassionate He is towards us, that He feels our grief with us.
Yeah. He's intimately acquainted with all of our ways.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's why to me, it does make sense when you think about whatever it is you may be going through, is to stop and recognize that Jesus is doing that with you. And many times you may not recognize it, but He's carrying you through those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And maybe it's a time we ought to just stop and recognize that He has picked us up and He's carrying us through something that's very troubling and painful.
That's the very definition of grace.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest.
Yes.
Right? And when we stop and we allow ourselves to start feeling that nearness, what I believe that you're experiencing is His love for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
If you think about it the way that I just kind of tried to explain it, but it's a powerful thing for me to realize that, right? I mean, Jesus was grieving when Lazarus died.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
He was
Exactly.
grieving
Yeah.
Lazarus. So he knows grief.
Yeah.
He knows. He's intimately acquainted with grief.
You know, even though he knew he was going to raise him from the dead, he could feel the grief in all of those around him too. And it said, and he wept. So he experienced what that was very much like, and he continues to with us, no matter what it is we may be going through. He's there grieving with us. You're right. He's there, providing that awesome grace that is so rich from God. Always grace.
It's heartbreaking, especially with family. Right? I mean, family can be rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are times that I grieve family. And it could be, why am I grieving it? Because it's not going the way I wanted
Right.
it to go.
Right.
It's not looking the way that I wanted. I wanted that relationship was important to me, and now it's changed. It's different. And it's changed my thought process on my emotions. What if this is Jesus's grief, not just mine? Right? Maybe it's mine, but maybe it's some of his too. So it's causing me to be a little bit more accepting of how I'm feeling about things. Now, I'm sure that quite a bit of the time it's me. But the idea that Jesus is experiencing it with me is very comforting, right? And the fact that he's doing it with me helps me process through those emotions and give him the ones that I think I should, and take the ones on that he wants to give me. I think it's a health to me. I'd call it a health. I'm healthier with how I think about and process and feel my emotions, knowing that he's doing that with me.
Yeah, as I've sat with the conversation, I've really moved, my mind is shifting in terms of how I think about Jesus feeling my feelings with me. And it really, for me, moves it from empathy to intimacy, and then to something even deeper. I mean, can you imagine? I can't imagine feeling someone else's feelings. I can have an experience of grief or joy or whatever it may be from what someone is saying, but I don't actually feel what they're feeling. Right? Hopefully that makes sense. I can't be in that person's mind and in their heart feeling what they're feeling, but Jesus literally feels what we feel in the way that we're feeling it. We don't need to describe it to him. We don't need to say, Jesus, do you feel what I'm feeling? He just does. And how does that even shift my questions and my thoughts and my prayers and everything? If he's feeling everything that I'm feeling, again, that for me, it has just increased a level of vulnerability, I suppose, with him. I don't need to ask him if, but Jesus, you feel what I'm feeling. What do you have to say about this? What do I have to learn from this? What's my next step in this? Kind of all of those things. Questions that I may have asked, but I'm sitting with him in a different way, that Jesus knows my every thought and my every feeling, and not just knows about it, but feels it and thinks it with me.
It even changes, for me, how I read, for instance, The Prodigal. I think that's a beautiful story about the heart of the Father. and what the heart of the Father really is. And the Son comes back, and I know we all know the story, the words of the story, but process it through from an emotional standpoint. The Father was experiencing joy at his Son's return. The Father must have experienced the opposite when the Son took his inheritance. But the Father gave it to him. And then when the Son returned, right, the Son is thinking here, it's better to be a servant in my Father's house than... But no, that's not the heart of the Father. The Father wasn't disgusted by the Son, right? The Father didn't look at the Son and say, you're unclean.
Yeah.
You need to go ritually cleanse. He didn't.
Mm-mm.
He took off his own robe. Can you imagine the emotion of just being accepted in your filth? Well, that's exactly the heart of the Father.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly the heart of the Father, that joy in the homecoming, that restoration of relationship. And, right, so what's the Father do next? Not only throws his robe over, gets him clean stuff, honestly, before he was clean. The Father just put a clean robe and a ring on his finger and then had a feast.
Yeah.
So it turned from mourning to joy. And isn't that the heart of the Father? Yeah, it is. It is. And when you're processing it, thinking about the emotions behind all of that, what a beautiful thing that's grace.
Yeah.
I'm back to being graced.
Yeah.
We are lavishly graced.
You know, and as you were kind of talking through that, the word that came up in my mind too, the Son wasn't just given his room back or just given a place back at the table. He was fully restored back into that family. Not just kind of given his stuff back, but fully restored back into that family. And that, I know it's not really a feeling. Restoration really isn't a feeling, but I feel a feeling along with that idea of just being fully restored, which I think goes back to grace as well. But isn't that God's desire for us too, to have full restoration of all the things?
Well, I think too, you have to realize the Son he could never be anything but the Son. He could never be a servant. That was his Son. And his inheritance was a fact. You know, he thought his inheritance was the material things, and he went and blew it all. But his inheritance was in who he was, the Son. And the other son had no clue either that he was the Son. His father says, you could have had a celebration anytime you wanted to, you know, but you kept trying to work hard to do everything, right and stuff. And yet all along, you were my son. It didn't make any difference. Everything I have is yours anyway. You're my son, And I think sometimes we forget that. I was just thinking about going back to the idea of redemption when God rescued me from destruction. I was just like that beggarly son who'd gone off and done his own thing. And God just pulled me out of that, and the kind of joy that came with that, and recognizing that I've been redeemed. I was bought off the slave block, paid for by him. And, go back and think about that and be absolutely gracious that you're the son or daughter of God. You're his. You're his. You're bought with a price. You're paid for. You're his. What a wonderful thing to be gracious for.
Yeah.
And you're his for eternity, not temporarily.
it kind of puts aside all the quabbles and all the little things of the world, right? When you think about that, where do I want my eyes focused on? All the little arguments I have in my head and the getting back at this and, getting justice for that. But the heart of the Father is all that he has, he wants to give us, and that we're his children, bought with a price, man.
Well, I'm grateful for both of you. I'm grateful for this place. I'm grateful for the podcast listeners. I'm grateful for my wife, Megan. I'm grateful for my father and mother and brother and nieces and nephews and all. I mean, there's lots of them. And it's actually a wonderful blessing to have so many people in my life to love and to be loved by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amen to that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely been grateful for all those things too. My wife and kids and, my family and just all the blessings that are here and everything. And one thing that I've been really sitting with and really grateful for as well is angels. We've had some Friday nights where the angels are just packing the room with us. And I've just been grateful for the presence of the Lord in the midst of that and just enjoying that and trying to be aware even of how the Lord is working in that way in other areas. But I've just been really grateful for, I guess I have a story from, and again, this kind of, I hope, connects well into even the restoration and just the love of the Lord. I have the story from when I was a kid, and I was laying in bed, and my room was in the basement, and it was pitch black in that room. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just saw this figure at the end of my bed, and it was the most frightening thing. And at that time, I wasn't equipped to know what to do with that. I just pulled the covers back over my head because I always kicked the covers down at the end of my bed. I just pulled the covers back over my head and sort of wheeled myself back to sleep just so I didn't have to be afraid anymore. And I remember very distinctly praying, Lord, because just seeing things that aren't seen, things like evil spirits or angels, like the whole idea just freaked me out from there on out. I just didn't want to be surprised by anything. And so I said, Lord, I don't want to see any evil spirits, and I don't want to see any angels as well. I just don't, because I think the idea of it would just be too frightening for me. And so I've carried that kind of through my life, and in the last couple of years, I've had to repent of that and say, Lord, I'm sorry that I ever prayed that prayer, that I would ever ask to not see the glorious things you're doing in the spiritual, essentially.
Sure.
And so I think when I say that I'm grateful to feel the angels and to feel their presence, it's a demonstration again of kind of that prodigal idea. I rejected something and pushed it away. And here now, after repenting and asking for forgiveness and confessing that, I feel like I'm being drawn back into that area or that experience or that presence of him, that I don't see angels as I feel them. I don't see them with my natural eyes, but I certainly feel them in my spirit just so powerfully. And I'm just so grateful for that, because that was something that I had carried a lot of shame about, that I would ever pray that prayer. And then to feel that restoration, that bringing back in, like, you can enjoy this still, even though you pushed it away at one time. Here it is. Enjoy the presence. So, yeah, I'm grateful for that, and like I said, my family, and grateful for you guys, and the fun conversations, and the heavy conversations, and the thought-provoking conversations. But it's all working for a purpose, and I'm very grateful that it all is fun, and it works to a purpose.
It all comes back to grace.
Yep,
Right?
it sure does.
It just comes back to the grace of God, how He does restore us in so many different ways, and it's precious. I agree with all y'all's thankfulness in all of this, because I think about that and just how rich it is that the family of God is a family, and the idea of loving and enjoying the family. Yeah, we get in our squabbles and stuff, but God does restore, heal, and leads us into righteous paths which are rich with Him and His presence and glory. Amen.
Amen.
Let's bless the listeners.
Yeah. Father, I do bless all of those that are listening, us at this table, with a new revelation of the richness of your grace that is so constantly with us throughout our day and week, never to leave us, never to forsake us, but always rich and present with us. Thank you, Lord.
Amen.